8 hours in bed, and you still wake up exhausted. If that sounds familiar, you are not imagining it. And you are definitely not alone. This is one of the things I hear most often in my practice. People come in, and they're not complaining about insomnia exactly. They're not lying awake all night. They're getting what should be enough sleep. 7 hours, 8 hours, sometimes more. And they still drag themselves out of bed every morning feeling like they have barely slept at all. The head is heavy. The body is stiff. The mood is low before the day has even started. And the first thought, before anything else, is how soon they can get back under the covers. I know that feeling personally. For several years, I woke up like that more mornings than I care to admit. I used to think I just needed more sleep, so I went to bed earlier. And I still woke up exhausted. What I eventually worked out, partly through reading, partly through paying more attention to my own habits, and partly through listening carefully to what my patients kept telling me, is that the hours you spend in bed are only one small part of the picture. Waking up tired after 8 hours is not a mystery. It is almost always a pattern. And patterns, once you can see them clearly, can be changed. What I want to do today is go through 8 specific habits that are very likely stealing your morning energy. Things happening the night before, or even earlier in the day, that most people never connect to how they feel when they wake up. And for each one, I want to give you something concrete and realistic that you can actually try. Let's start at number 8. Number 8, stop eating late and heavy the night before. This one surprises people. They do not think of yesterday's dinner as having anything to do with this morning's exhaustion. But in my experience, what you eat, and crucially when you eat it, has a very real effect on how rested you feel the following morning. A large meal eaten late in the evening asks a great deal of your digestive system at exactly the time your body is trying to slow down and prepare for sleep. Heavy food, a lot of refined sugar, a big late takeaway. These things do not just affect how you feel at 10 o'clock at night. They can still be affecting you at 7 the next morning. What patients describe is a kind of morning heaviness, bloating, a thick, foggy feeling that sits behind the eyes. Sometimes strong hunger or cravings almost immediately after waking, which is itself a signal that blood sugar has been on a difficult ride through the night. I want to be clear here. I am not saying carbohydrates are the enemy. Foods like oats, whole grains, legumes, fruit, and vegetables are genuinely good for you and are not the issue. What I'm talking about is the habit of regularly eating large amounts of heavily processed food and refined sugar, particularly in the evening and particularly close to bedtime. A nutritionist colleague of mine put it in a way I have never forgotten. She said the body does not know it is 11 o'clock at night. It only knows it has just been given a large amount of work to do, and it is going to do that work whether you want it to or not. Sleep and digestion are both important, but they do not sit comfortably together when they are competing for the same resources at the same time. My suggestion here is simple. Keep a rough food and sleep record for about a week. Just a note of what you ate, when you ate it, what time you went to bed, and how you felt the following morning. Most people who do this start to notice patterns within a few days that they had never connected before. The relationship between Tuesday's late heavy dinner and Wednesday morning's foggy head becomes much harder to ignore when it is sitting there in front of you on paper. Number 7, choose a breakfast that keeps your energy steady. Most people assume that eating breakfast is automatically a good start to the day, and it can be, but what you eat for breakfast matters far more than most people realize. The wrong kind of breakfast can leave you feeling worse by mid-morning than if you had eaten nothing at all. A lot of very common breakfast choices, sweetened cereals, pastries, white toast with jam, flavored yogurts, sugary orange juice, give you energy quickly. But that energy does not last. What rises sharply tends to fall sharply. And the crash that follows a high-sugar breakfast can leave you feeling sluggish, unfocused, and hungry again within an hour or two. For some people, that crash hits before they have even properly started their morning. What tends to work better is building your first meal around things that release energy more gradually. Protein is particularly useful here. Eggs, unsweetened natural yogurt, nuts, beans. These slow things down in a way that keeps you feeling steadier for longer. Fiber helps in a similar way. Oats, whole grain toast, fruit, seeds. These are not complicated or expensive. They just give your body something more sustained to work with. I will be honest with you. I spent years eating toast and coffee and wondering why I was hungry and irritable by 10:30. It took me longer than it should have to make the connection. Now, I want to say something here that not everyone expects from a doctor. Breakfast is not compulsory. Some people feel genuinely better eating soon after waking. Others do better waiting a few hours. The research on meal timing is still developing, and I do not think there is one right answer that applies to every person. What I would say is pay attention to your own body. If your current breakfast is leaving you flat and hungry 2 hours later, that is worth looking at. But if skipping breakfast or eating later works well for you and your health, I'm not going to tell you otherwise. One important note: if you have diabetes, are on certain medications, or have any condition that affects your blood sugar, please talk to your own doctor before changing when or how you eat. That is a conversation that needs to happen between you and someone who knows your full picture. Number 6, drink water before you drink coffee. This is one that I think is genuinely underappreciated, and I include myself in that. It took me longer than it should have to take this seriously. When you sleep, you're not drinking anything for 7 or 8 hours. You're also losing fluid through breathing and, if you tend to sleep warm, through mild perspiration. By the time your alarm goes off, your body is often already in a state of mild dehydration. And mild dehydration, even at levels that do not make you feel obviously thirsty, can cause headaches, poor concentration, low mood, and a kind of dull fatigue that feels very similar to not having slept enough. A pharmacist colleague of mine made a point about this that I found genuinely useful. She said that many of the symptoms people attribute to needing caffeine in the morning, the headache, the fog, the sluggishness, are actually symptoms of dehydration. The coffee may mask them temporarily, but it is not fixing the underlying cause. And caffeine is itself mildly diuretic, which means it can compound the dehydration rather than resolve it. The habit I would suggest is very simple. Before you reach for coffee, drink a glass of water. Put a glass or a bottle on your bedside table or somewhere visible the night before. So it is the first thing you see. You do not need to force down a liter before breakfast. Just a comfortable glass of water before anything else. Then continue drinking steadily through the morning. There is reasonable research on the effect of hydration on cognitive performance and mood, and I will leave a link in the description for anyone who wants to look into that further. It is not dramatic reading, but it is convincing. Number 5, get up on the first alarm. I know this is not what people want to hear. The snooze button feels like mercy. It feels like 5 more minutes of kindness before the day begins. But those extra minutes are not the rest they feel like. Here is what is actually happening. When your alarm goes off, your brain begins the process of shifting from sleep into wakefulness. That transition takes a little time. When you hit snooze and fall back asleep, your brain does not simply pause in a light, refreshing state until the alarm goes again. It begins descending back into a deeper stage of sleep. And then, 7 or 8 minutes later, the alarm pulls you back out of that descent before it has gone anywhere useful. The result is that you wake up feeling more confused and more sluggish than you would have if you had simply got up the first time. This is called sleep inertia. It is that thick, disoriented sensation, the feeling that your brain is wrapped in something and cannot quite switch on. Most people experience some degree of it every morning. But repeated snoozing can make it significantly worse and extend it much further into your morning. I used to hit snooze twice every morning without thinking about it. It felt like I was being kind to myself. What I was actually doing was starting every day in a worse state than I needed to. The practical solution is almost embarrassingly simple. Move your alarm, whether that is a phone or a clock, to somewhere that requires you to physically get up to turn it off. Across the room, on the windowsill, in the hallway, anywhere that means you cannot reach it from a bed. Once you're standing, the battle is largely won. And keep this in mind. I will come back to it in a moment when we get to number 4, because the two habits connect in a way that makes both of them work considerably better together. Number 4, get light and movement within minutes of waking. One of the things that strikes me most when I look at what has changed in daily life over the last 20 years is how much harder it has become for the body to know what time it is. We have artificial light late into the evening. We have screens that keep our minds active long after dark. And then in the morning, we pull the alarm off the bedside table, lie in a darkened room, scrolling through a phone, and wonder why we still feel half asleep an hour after waking up. The body's internal clock, the circadian rhythm, is regulated primarily by light. Natural morning light, in particular, is one of the most powerful signals available to your brain that the night has ended and the day has begun. When you expose yourself to bright natural light early in the morning, your brain gets a clear instruction to suppress the sleep hormone melatonin and increase alertness. When you stay in a dark room with a glowing screen, those signals get confused. What I do myself, and this genuinely changed how my mornings felt, is open the curtains as the very first thing. Before coffee, before checking anything, before sitting down. If it is practical, I step outside for even just a few minutes. On days when that is not possible, I stand near the window. It sounds almost too simple, but light is not a small thing for the body. It is a primary signal. Combine this with movement. You do not need to exercise hard immediately after waking. Walk around the house. Stretch for a few minutes. Make your bed and tidy your space. The physical activity, even at that gentle level, helps circulation and helps the brain complete the transition from sleep into proper wakefulness. 2 or 3 minutes of movement makes a measurable difference to how alert you feel within the next half hour. This is why getting up on the first alarm and immediately getting light and movement are so closely connected. They're not two separate habits. They are one sequence. And when you do them together consistently, the effect on your mornings is considerably greater than either one alone. Number 3, move your body during the day. People often think of sleep as something separate from the rest of their day. You go to bed, you sleep, you wake up. But sleep quality is not just determined by what happens between 10 at night and 6 in the morning. It is influenced by everything that happened in the 16 hours before that. Regular physical activity during the day is one of the strongest predictors of good sleep quality. Not intense exercise necessarily, just consistent movement. Walking, cycling, gardening, swimming, dancing, any physical work around the house. These things help your body build what I would call genuine physical tiredness by the end of the day. The kind of tiredness that leads to deep, restorative sleep, rather than the mental exhaustion of a stressful day that leaves you wired and restless at bedtime. The physiotherapists I work with are considerably better on this than I am, and what they tell me consistently is that people underestimate how much the body needs to move during the day in order to rest properly at night. We're not designed to sit for 10 or 12 hours and then lie down and sleep deeply. The body needs to have done something. I want to be honest about one thing here. The research on evening exercise and sleep is not entirely settled. Some people find that exercising in the evening, particularly anything intense, makes it harder for them to fall asleep. Others find it makes no difference at all. I do not have a clean answer on this one because the individual variation is genuinely wide. What I would say is, if you exercise in the evening and you sleep well, carry on. If you exercise in the evening and you consistently struggle to fall asleep, it is worth trying to move your activity earlier in the day and seeing whether that changes anything. Number 2, protect the hour before bed. Your morning begins the night before. I say this to patients regularly, and I think it is one of the most useful reframings available when it comes to sleep. Most people focus on sleep itself, the mattress, the blackout curtains, the temperature of the room. And those things matter. But what you do in the hour or two before you go to bed has an enormous influence on the quality of sleep that follows. The biggest factor, in my view, is screen use. Phones, tablets, televisions, and computers produce bright light. Evening exposure to that light, particularly when the screen is close to your face, interferes with the natural rise of melatonin that your body needs to feel sleepy. Your brain reads the light as a signal that it is still daytime, and it responds accordingly by staying more alert than it should be at that hour. But the light is only part of it. The content matters just as much. An upsetting news story, a competitive game, a long scroll through social media, a work email that raises an issue you cannot resolve until tomorrow. All of these keep your mind working at a level that makes it very hard to settle. You might put the phone down, but your thoughts are still running, and you take those thoughts into bed with you. My wife changed her evening routine about 2 years ago. She stopped using her phone in the last 40 minutes before bed and started reading an actual printed book instead. The difference she described was significant. She fell asleep faster, woke less during the night, and felt more rested in the morning. I followed her lead not long after, which she will tell you is unusual for me. The practical change here does not need to be dramatic. Try stopping screen. Use 30 to 60 minutes before your intended sleep time. Use that time for something that does not require a screen. A warm shower, gentle stretching, preparing things for the next morning, reading, or simply sitting quietly. If you genuinely cannot avoid screens in the evening, reduce the brightness as much as possible and activate whatever warm tone night setting your device has. That will not eliminate the problem, but it reduces it. And if your phone is currently on your bedside table, move it. Charging in another room removes the temptation to check it during the night and removes the first alarm problem we talked about earlier, all in one step. There's a good body of research on evening light exposure and sleep onset that I find quite compelling. I will leave a link in the description for anyone who wants to read further on that. Number 1. Keep the same sleep and wake time every day. If there is one habit on this entire list that I would ask you to prioritize above all others, it is this one. And it is also the simplest to describe, even if it takes some discipline to actually do. Go to bed at roughly the same time every night. Wake up at roughly the same time every morning, including at weekends. Your body has an internal clock. It is not a metaphor. It is a real biological system that regulates when you feel sleepy, when you feel alert, when your body temperature rises and falls, when certain hormones are released. That system works best when it can predict what is coming. When your schedule is consistent, your body learns to prepare for sleep before you even get into bed. You feel sleepy at the right time. You fall asleep more easily. You move through the stages of sleep more efficiently. And you wake up feeling more rested. When your schedule is irregular, going to bed at 10 one night, midnight the next, 1 in the morning the night after that, then try to catch up with a long sleep at the weekend, your body's clock cannot find its rhythm. It is like asking someone to be consistently productive when their working hours change randomly every day. The system is capable of good work, but it cannot do good work without some predictability. I used to tell patients that weekend lie-ins were a reasonable way to recover from a difficult week. I do not say that anymore. What the research has shown more clearly in recent years is that irregular sleep timing, what some researchers call social jet lag, can disrupt your sleep quality across the whole week, not just at the weekend. A consistent wake time, even on Saturday and Sunday, does more for most people's energy levels than any amount of catching up. The practical steps here are straightforward. Work out what time you genuinely need to wake up on most mornings. Count back 7 to 8 hours. That is your target bedtime. It will not be perfect every night, but having a consistent target is considerably better than having none. Your bedroom environment supports this or works against it. A room that is dark, reasonably quiet, and slightly cool tends to support better sleep than one that is warm, light, and noisy. A mattress and pillow that are genuinely comfortable for your body, not the ones you have had for 15 years, and simply stop noticing, make a real difference. These are not luxuries. They're the basic conditions that allow this system to work. And on the subject of eating, try to finish your evening meal at a time that gives your body at least 2 to 3 hours before bed. You do not need to follow any extreme rule about this. Just give digestion enough time to do its work before you ask your body to sleep. What you can do starting from tonight. I want to give you something specific to take away from this. Not a general idea, but an actual plan for tonight and tomorrow morning. Tonight, try to finish eating at a reasonable hour. If you normally eat late, even moving your meal 30 minutes earlier is a start. In the last hour before bed, put the phone down. Charge it somewhere other than your bedside table. Put a glass of water somewhere you will see it when you wake up. And go to bed at a time that gives you 7 to 8 hours before your alarm. Tomorrow morning, when the alarm goes off, get up. Not after the third snooze. On the first, open the curtains straight away. Drink the water before anything else. Move your body for a few minutes, even if that just means walking to the kitchen and back. Then, when you're ready to eat, Choose something that will keep you going rather than something that will drop you in 2 hours. Try this consistently for 1 week. Not one perfect morning, a whole week. And pay attention not just to how you feel when you wake up, but to your energy through the morning, your concentration, your mood, and your appetite. Those things will tell you more than any single morning can. I want to say one more thing before I go. Waking up tired is not a personal failing. It is not laziness, and it is not weakness. In my experience, it is almost always a signal from your routine, your environment, or your body that something needs adjusting. Most of what I've talked about today is genuinely within reach. None of it requires a prescription. None of it costs very much. It just requires a little attention and a little consistency. If you're sleeping enough hours and doing these things reasonably well, and you're still waking up exhausted every morning, particularly if you snore heavily, or your partner has noticed you stop breathing during the night, or you feel an overwhelming need to sleep during the day, please do go and see your doctor. There are conditions like sleep apnea that can cause exactly this kind of persistent morning tiredness, and they are very treatable once they are identified. That is not something to keep managing with extra coffee. If this was useful, I put out a new video most weeks. You're welcome to follow along. And if there is something you would like me to cover, or a question you want to put to me, drop in the comments. I do read them.